There we go. We did it.
Hey.
We just extended the timer so we could actually do it, but we did it. Hey everybody, I'm Dan and Elko. Welcome to Live at the Hive, episode 44.
I'm Courtney Castle.
Matt Stefanich.
And here we are, episode 44. Summer is over.
Here we are, week 1 of September is even over. So if you went back to school, whether you're a teacher or a student, I hope you had a good first week.
She says as she laughs.
Yeah, I don't have kids, so I'm cackling over
Yeah.
here.
My kids are actually holding up pretty well.
Yeah.
They were pretty excited.
The first
yeah.
week is good. Like you get back into the routine of things and stuff like
Yeah.
that. You get to see your friends. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually wasn't a complete disaster like I thought it was going to be.
There you go. That's good.
There we
That's
go.
good. No tears. Just
No tears. Mila's not in school yet because she's going when she's like 19. So she's a January baby, so
Yeah.
she's going to be like 4. She starts JK. She's going to be like,
wow.
yeah, she's going to be so far ahead of every other kid
Yeah.
in that class.
good
So,
stuff.
anyhow, yes, so we're back to it, and today we got lots of stuff to talk about. Let's
Yeah,
go.
lots of what's new, lots of new things, lots of chatter happening in the world of marketing this week. And we'll also be getting into a bit of a roadmap for you guys in our What's Working, a roadmap to building your own, a very effective website. And we've broken it down into kind of 4 simple stages for you so that really anyone could do it. And also some tools we'd recommend you use while you go about it.
Yeah, one of the things that we do see is, and we're often handed off projects where these sites turn into the never-ending story. Lots of cooks in the kitchen, and then the thing that comes out of it is not what anybody really wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
So this helps avoid that and keep it agile. So that's kind of cool. But the first thing, and unless you've been living under a rock, which you may have been, I don't know. But this small company called Nike was doing a bunch of stuff pretty
That's
recently.
got a lot of people chatting. You've probably seen it in your news feed, or it's had a lot of coverage recently. But it's basically, in a nutshell, it's the resurgence of the 30-year-old campaign, Just Do It from Nike, but in this new variant, they're calling it Dream Crazy. So there was an ad that was aired in the first week of when the NFL launched, and then there's also been display ads that have gone out that have been tweeted by different like large sponsors of Nike from the campaign. So it's the kind of interesting part about it is if you've seen, I don't know if we can put up, just scroll down to the first ad there so people can see if you haven't seen already.
And I want to say Elizabeth Toth said hello. Hey, Liz from PEI.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Yeah, but you can see right here, this is one example. This is the tweet that went out earlier this week. And in this very article, it says that apparently the media coverage of this tweet was worth $43 million.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that stat's coming from, but very interesting. But you can see kind of the theme of this Dream Crazy, and especially the display advertisements, is they're leveraging any sort of controversy from some of these already existing sponsorships. So in an instance, typically in the past, from a PR perspective, if your sponsor or influencer gets into any sort of hot water, they're typically dropped, as opposed to leveraging that and even putting it front and center in your creative. So from a content perspective, I find that very interesting. But I know there's other kind of layers to this campaign strategy as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing to keep in mind is that this is very calculated, and I mean, you can be as innocent or cynical as you may want to be about Nike. I prefer to go down the slightly cynical route. It's a matter of convenience for a marketer, and really what it comes down to is everybody knew that Trump was going to come out at the beginning of the NFL and make this kneeling issue an issue. The interesting fact about the NFL is it's actually relatively recent that national anthems were ever played at NFL football games. Historically, they were never even played.
Yeah.
Only since the Iraq War. So it's actually fairly recent history. That's a new thing. Anyhow, regardless of that, not getting into that, I think there's a couple of points to be made about this. Is Nike's marketing team has Nike's been under not assault, but it's more competitive. Reebok is gaining a name, quite a big name. Nike's former dominance wasn't sticking as well as it was. They do have a social conscience component to their business, which I think is real, right? Except for the fact that they use, child labor in India and things like that they've been accused of in the past. But that's also.
But there's definitely been a bit of a comeback story for someone as large as them, if you can even call it that. But there's been a climb backwards from that decline. I think they've been in the news for a bit for some of their recent campaigns, some of the recent strategies that they've been using that have been proving successful for them. And I think this is just like the bigger reiteration of that. So I don't know if you guys have seen these ads out and about. If you've seen them, let us know. Where did you see them? What did you think of them?
Yeah, we're getting a bunch of comments in here right now. Kristen loves the campaign regardless of her opinion of Nike, so that kind of says it all. So I think I want to like address this whole political stance, because there is it's Nike, since they introduced Just Do It 30 years ago. That was the first time, or one of the first times, that it was truly brand marketing. There was no talk of a product at all. Apple did a similar thing in 1984 with the release of the Big Brother commercial, the very famous Big Brother commercial. Now, yes, social justice is part of it, but keep in mind that Nike's Just Do It kind of campaign was one of the first ever pure brand marketing, and they're trying to get back into that. Now, let's be a little cynical here from the marketing side and look at things like Pew and Jupiter Research and demographics and who your real customer is and what your North Star customer is, right? So if you were to look at it and break it down, there's really fundamentally kind of three groups that you could pair off in this situation. You've got Group A, which would be very supportive of a Donald Trump. They are the ones that are burning their Nikes. However, if you go through, and I'm sure that this would have happened at Nike, they won't just come out with a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate company like Nike. Like Nike owns Converse, for example, right? Like they own a ton of things. So you look at that demographic group, and the question is, how much do they actually purchase of our product? If we infuriate them, right, are we really going to lose a lot? They would have done the numbers and said, probably not our most valuable customer. The second demographic would be the urban African-American community, which tend to be highly attracted to trends. They buy Nike, they buy brand names, they buy things that are aspirational luxury that you know, whether it's Jay-Z or Beyonce. And I'm not just saying maybe not necessarily African-American, but certainly a younger urban demographic. Right? That are fans of this. They are going to react positively, obviously, to this message. And then the third demographic would be any consumer under the age of 35 that is heavily influenced by social justice campaigns, who will now purchase Nike in support of Nike against the people burning Nike shoes and cutting off logos.
No, exactly. I mean, when this first came out, I remember on Twitter, it was hugely trending, and there was people going back and forth saying whether they were going to burn all their Nike stuff or go out that day and actually purchase more Nike. You know, so it's you exactly hit the nail on the head there, Dan.
For sure, and I think from a PR perspective, we were discussing how it's it's the cost of taking sides, basically. Like, it was calculated. It wasn't something that, from the cynical or maybe more business-minded side, they were very conscious of what they were doing, and they had the result that they expected, is what we anticipate from this.
And I think right now, especially a lot of larger companies are wanting to be on that, I guess you could say, like, it's more politically fueled, but right side of history, you know what I mean? Like, everyone wants to kind of choose a side or whatever and appeal to those people, especially like now in such a politically charged like world, you know what I mean?
It's what I like to call manufactured outrage. Everybody is outraged about something in a polarized world. I think the thing is, so if you look at any of these companies, right, none of them will ever do anything solely based on social justice. They will do it if it aligns to their demographic and their consumer.
That's kind of the beef that a lot of people have with the social justice, like, marketing or whatever trend you would like to call it, in that how marketers for campaigns are kind of piggybacking on that. You know, that's the problem most people have with it, right, is the genuine nature of it. It's like, does your company really care?
Well, and you know, if you take it from a marketing perspective and kind of disjoin yourself from a little bit of reality, I mean, obviously these are important topics, but one of the things you talk about all the time in marketing is creating an emotional connection. And if you created them, thank you. Let's see. Well, Liz, I'll grab your comment in a second there. the social justice creates the reaction to the group that they want it to target, who are going to be their most valuable buyers. And unfortunately, that's just the world we live in.
Yeah.
You could make the same argument for a company like Chick-fil-A or Papa John's Pizza. They're on the other side. Their demographic is exactly the opposite demographic. So they appeal to that demographic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and really it ties back to marketing 101, right? Your ad is not supposed to be meant for everyone. Our target audience isn't everyone with disposable income. Like that's not your audience. You have a specific audience. Your ad should be catered to that audience. And like, yes, you should consider the fallout of like a negative reaction to it. But I think that you calculate the cost of that and who it's directed for, and you're really not going to make everyone happy with every one of your ads. That's just something you'll notice through, marketing and community management and things like that. But it's the value that you're calculating at the end of it. So pretty,
So Elizabeth, I don't know if do you have I can't expand your first comment there, Liz. Liz is saying she likes to call it the beginning, the spark of a movement. And that's exactly what it is, right? I mean, Nike purchased quite a bit of airtime for this ad running on last night's season kickoff opener. That is strategic, right? I mean,
they just don't do that for fun.
Elizabeth's comment was she said today's Obama speech ties into this what we're discussing very well. He said that this young urban demographic is now the largest voting group in the U.S. and if they all showed up to vote, they have the ability to sway the outcome of the mild terms. The midterms, sorry.
The midterms. Yeah. No, for sure. And so, I think with all marketing, I think the reason the larger companies can do it, and sometimes they don't do well, Nike obviously has very heavily planned this, is nothing is done just on a whim, right? It's all very heavily researched in how they're going to do it.
And the spend behind it too. They ran a video ad during like the first NFL game. Like I imagine that would be quite a price tag on that.
Yeah, Nike's not afraid to spend the money, and they have the money. But if you were in the world of PR, for example, and you saw the uptake of that, every single person burning Nikes and making it trend, and then the reaction from a PR perspective is, I'm sure that somebody Pew or Jupiter or somebody will calculate the media value of all of those trends over the past week. I don't think Trump has even mentioned Nike.
Yeah, he has.
He
today.
has? Perfect. Well, then it's like, how much money is that kind of publicity worth?
I know.
Right? Because their demographic is 180 degrees opposed to Trump, so he's going to fire up everybody.
One of the most watched Twitter profiles.
Yep. And so there's a whole lot of Hannah just said, anyone care to comment on the slight controversy of the Nike ads? That is exactly what we were talking about.
Dial back a few minutes.
Yeah. But the thing is that the media value, the dollar value associated with a strategic campaign like this, and in my opinion, executed pretty much flawlessly. The ad itself is actually really fantastic. It hits on Nike's North Star of just do it, and talking about the inspiration rather than the product.
For sure.
And then I guess you could, if you were to use a cynical term, it's the manipulation of social media, but it is. They have perfectly positioned themselves on a whole bunch of different levels, and it'll be interesting to see what the lift is. It was actually kind of funny. It also leads to certain people's probably lack of knowledge about the industry. Converse trended for a bit because a whole bunch of people that were really upset with Nike said, okay, fine, I'm going to go back to my Converse. And then a number of people rightly pointed out that Nike has owned Converse for quite some time, so go ahead. But you see, again, it's like go to one of our other dozen brands that we own, as long as it's not Reebok.
Yeah, and the other reason I think it's a great campaign is that it's very much what you're trying to do with ads or with content or anything that you're putting out there is create a sentiment. Should never be neutral, and we've said it many times on the live, we say it many times in the office, is that you should be evoking an emotion from someone, whether it's an ad or a Facebook post or an Instagram story, an email. Someone should feel something. Should they feel, inspired? Should they feel, frustrated when they read it? What is the outcome and the sentiment? And when you dive into, deeper analytics, we'll show you that kind of ranking. And they've said thus far for this campaign, it's actually like neutral to positive is the majority. Although a lot of people would say like they've calculated that and what will come out. So very interesting. I think that, like we said, their intent was to create anger and also inspiration. So
yeah, and I think fundamentally, again, if you want to go back to the brand that Nike has, is their brand has been inspirational and aspirational for over 30 years, and it's built them into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Again, I bet you couldn't tell me the brand name of one of Nike's shoes. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The Air Jordans, right?
Yep.
But the thing that the alignment is that it was a perfect alignment because, again, the reason Kaepernick, and there's a lot of military and, Wesley Clark, former 5-star general, supreme leader of NATO, or whatever he's called, supreme general, whatever, came out and in support of this as a valid way to protest racial injustice in the United States, which, being Canadian, you're probably not as exposed to this in other areas, but it's a big issue, and it's a big issue for a lot of these people. So, it's a really hot button topic.
So you're laughing at Hannah.
Hannah's just...
Hannah's running commentary on his quarterback skills.
Well, half of that particular year, that season of the San Francisco 49ers, which is Hannah's team, was in fact indicted of some form of criminal offense that particular year when they made it to the Super Bowl. So,
and Elizabeth's telling us they were her client, so maybe she has some inside scoop for us.
Very cool. Yes, I've known. Just so everybody knows, Liz and I worked together a couple of times over the years. She's a brilliant brand marketer and project manager and all sorts of things, having worked with some very major brands. And now she's got a horse farm, I guess, out in PEI, living the dream.
Nice.
Equestrian stuff. Sorry if I'm saying all the wrong words about your horses. I don't really know much about horses. Anyhow, the brilliance of it is that it was well calculated. It gets back to Nike's roots of just do it. Managed to find the right demographic for them, and then just the media value of inserting themselves right in the middle and not being afraid to lose the wrong customer. I think from a business perspective, it's okay to lose the wrong customer.
I think even from their messaging there, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. It's exactly what Nike did. You know what I mean? Like, they went out on a limb, and not a limb, but they went on a certain direction, putting it all on the line, right? Like, who knew what would happen? Like, yeah, you said they were going to do like calculations and stuff, but you never really know the full extent of a decision like this.
Yeah, 100% that this was fully calculated internally within Nike. This was not like the marketing department went out and this was certainly talked about, because at the size that Nike is at, you don't want to be just randomly making these mistakes.
Yeah, and just the size of the campaign itself. It's an extremely large campaign with very large names involved. So obviously very, very much pre-planned, but there was a comment about that. There's a meme where people have now put Kaepernick's face beside Trump's. Again, disjoin your emotional self from the positioning of it, and think about the media value of that kind of work where your customers are creating this and spreading your brand around. Yeah, and you'll see, and we've seen it more and more. People doing this kind of a thing to break through the noise, and it's very much a tactic where people are like, let's get people divided, and like Dan said, it's manufactured. These emotions and these debates that are going on is very much the intent. They want you to debate it. They want it covered on different blogs across the internet. It's all great coverage for them, and I'd assume the numbers, like they said, 43 million just from the one tweet. I would like to see the results of the media
So
coverage.
I was just looking it up that within the first 24 hours, Nike's online sales jumped 31%. Yeah, and don't look, from a business perspective, the markets are moving all around because Trump is threatening trade tariffs with everybody, so the entire markets are moving, and Nike stock really has not done anything strange from prior to this. But anyways, a really great way. Now, aligning yourself with social justice, maybe you don't want to be as controversial as this, but again, we talk a lot about businesses large or small, getting involved in your local community and putting your beliefs in front of yourself is a very effective way to build customer loyalty, let people understand who you are, and transparency, whether it's charitable organizations, community organizations, whatever aligns with you is always a great way. And again, not suggesting that you go to these lengths, but
no, but some companies touch hot button topics naturally through what they do, and it's like I'd rather see a company thoughtfully be involved in the conversation as opposed to being like, no, we don't touch any of that.
Yep.
You know, if it has to do with your business and that's what people are talking about,
You should
find a way
address
to
it,
be involved in the conversation, not just for the sake of it or being a troll, but thoughtfully.
Absolutely. So we were just talking about how we're going to get this down to half an hour, 35 minutes on the live stream. We've been talking about this for 20 minutes. So moving right along, if you drop your comments in the comment section, we'll get back to you on them. But we should probably
If you have more feelings about Nike, leave your comments, leave your thoughts. How did you feel about the campaign? Yeah, we'll circle back to it later. But
I'm sure Hannah's going to. Oh, there we go.
Hannah, we want to know how you feel.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Elizabeth tosses, if their brand promise is aspirational, it's a worthy campaign. There you go. Agreed. Yeah. Absolutely. So moving right along to our good friends at Twitter, more new features.
Yeah, so Twitter just unveiled a new feature that you can use natively through the platform where you would live stream from, or through via Periscope, owned by Twitter. But basically you can live stream, but just audio only now. So as opposed to video, think of it as like, akin to like live streaming a podcast, or if you remember radio.
If you remember radio.
But yeah, so they've added that feature, rolled it out this week. I haven't seen too many examples of people diving into it, but there has been a lot of chatter about it, and just seeing the potential for it. So curious on the advancement of that, and on the voice and audio elements we just talked last week about some music streaming platforms introducing audio ads and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now you could have audio ads in your live stream, but I think they're just testing the grounds on Twitter yet again, trying to expand what it does and kind of match the other platforms out there, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And podcasting is I still think kind of quite often misunderstood from a technical aspect. A podcast is an XML data feed that goes out to Google Play and to iTunes and various other things. This is probably a level of convenience, and somewhat interesting, but TBD. I think it's going to be a little bit more of Twitter finding out what people end up doing with it, and how you integrate it into if you've got a podcast, how you integrate this into your podcasting strategy. But yeah, definitely Twitter coming out with more features across the board.
If I had to think about it, it might be like a result of some analytics about Periscope and people using it and the usage, and maybe people were adverse to using it because they would be on it visually. So probably just trying to increase the usage of Periscope and live streaming by providing the audio element. I'm working with video people all the time. It's very difficult sometimes to get people in front of the camera, but just speaking audio, probably a lot more people willing to test it out and try it.
They're also saying that they anticipate it to be a way that people share more of what they want in more than 280 characters. So it'll be interesting to see how that's used.
Yep. You can
Stay tuned.
I can only imagine.
Twitter rants. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
For sure. But Periscope is a very interesting. It's a different dynamic, and there's a lot of Periscope channels that are actually massive. I watch a lot of politics live streams, so rallies and things like that you don't necessarily get full stream on TV. But yeah, it's certainly Twitter looking at different ways for them to expand the offerings that they've got in what is a very different product than anything like a Facebook or an Instagram, right? And also, I think I get this sense that Jack Dorsey would like to depoliticize his platform a little bit, because it's been heavily used for that and a lot less for connecting and sharing and things like that, right? So. Interesting to see what comes of that. And we are live on Periscope now, all over. Yes, we are. Let's see here, moving right along.
Yeah, then I think we wanted to chat just about Facebook, I think. And there were some reports that came out about Facebook this week in terms of usage. There's a few things with Facebook that kind of tie into each other that we'd like to discuss. But basically, they're calling it, I believe the article was calling it an exodus of Facebook's users. And it's a report that's come out that has said the amount of people, especially millennials and the younger audience, that have left and deleted the Facebook mobile app in the last year is quite substantial. So it's a huge drop off. And we were just noting that probably most fingers are going to be pointed at the Facebook issues from earlier this year, and this is just the fallout continuation of that. That's just happening a little slower than people anticipated originally. But it's kind of in line with, I don't think it's any real secret to anyone in marketing that Facebook's been having some issues maintaining a younger audience right now anyway. So kind of a reiteration of that and just a next step. But yeah, very, very interesting that they actually have reports and numbers on it now.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time, obviously, to figure out the effects. But I think this is like two-part, and it is fascinating. So Google and Alphabet are kind of just a satellite on the outside of all of this. Like nothing's affecting us, and in fact, if you were to look at the amount of data that they've got, it's astronomically much more and has a deeper effect than what Facebook is doing. There's just absolutely no doubt about it. But Google's revenues have not been hurt. Google is basically ignoring Congress, not showing up, which is dangerous in and of itself. But they're very quietly kind of proceeding along their due course, as it is. Facebook, and this is, I think, the social media side of things, it's the Wild West, right? I mean, these, as Zuckerberg said last time, when he was a podcast, and I believe this. He goes, I never thought when I was developing Facebook in my dorm room that this was going to be anything that Russian political insurgent teams were going to come in and actually just like they're not hacking it, they're just using the platform. So it's this kind of maturity, right? It's like Facebook was this wildly growing teenager going out partying, and then all of a sudden, I can't do that. And then what you see is the number of people that are taking breaks from the site. So certainly, this doesn't include Instagram data as well. It's solely on Facebook.
And not Messenger
And not
either.
Messenger.
Yeah, I was about to
either.
say with Messenger, I can't see too many people uninstalling the Messenger.
No, I believe Messenger growth is increased, if anything, over the last year, and especially Messenger, like the actual bot element in of it as well. They're really doubling down on the marketing side of Messenger. So
yeah, for sure.
Those are Messenger and Instagram are outside of this. Those are their poster children right now.
Yeah, but this is and this is interesting to see. The Facebook is core product and people know them, but Facebook owns WhatsApp and they have Messenger and they have Insta, and they keep acquiring more and more to build out and kind of keep up with the times and see how things are going to happen. And then you have things within the platform, for example, the big focus on Facebook Watch, the reduction in the importance of the news feed, right? Because that's stagnating, and the increase in the stories. So this kind of very fluid ball of what Facebook is and how people are using it. The interesting thing about this is, and I do this quite a bit with privacy settings. I don't know if you guys do at all, but you have a lot of privacy settings within Facebook that are quite simply not used, like the vast majority of users. And what they're seeing is a very big increase in the number of people that are actually using the privacy settings now, and at least being aware of what they can have control over.
Absolutely.
So, very interesting stuff, and again, TBD to see what happens. We have we should have just a socio-political live at the Hive version, where we can just talk about.
I'm down for that one. All about it.
Well, I'm not going to get into it, but I just find it hilarious how Alphabet. So Larry Page is the CEO of Alphabet. They're just basically ignoring everybody.
Yeah.
Like not answering. It's like we are not.
Ghosted Congress.
Yeah,
That's
ghosted
the
Congress.
meme I want to see is the empty Google seat that just says ghosted. We'll make that. We'll post that in the comments later.
It was kind of funny to see Sheryl Sandberg and then Jack Dorsey and then a Google chair. Empty. It's 4:51.
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
We're gonna uphold our promise of keeping within the time frame.
We are going to uphold our promise
right.
here. So let's jump into what's working. Oh, I don't know if I missed something here.
I think we're good.
Okay, so let's talk about David. There is no privacy online. That's very true. That is very true. For some reason, my Facebook page's app glitched, but yes, it's absolutely true. There is no privacy online.
There's a very scary quote from David, our head of advertising.
Yeah.
There is no privacy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely to be debated. But let's talk about launching a website and giving a pretty simple, straightforward roadmap into different things that you can do, a process that you can use to, let's just do this, to effectively organize, plan, launch, and also separate the functions of site development. Typically, what we see is design first, content and user experience last, or never.
In some cases.
Or never. And I know Elizabeth Toth has a lot of experience in this area. So let's just go through each step. Who wants to kick it off?
For sure. So first and foremost, whenever we build a website, which we're doing a lot of at the moment, whether it's a very large e-commerce site or a super simple, just an information-based site, more so for like contacting you, it's the same process. So you can use this as a scalable process. And like we said, it's to keep things efficient and on track because there's a lot of things strategically and execution-wise involved in website building. But step one is you start at the top with your strategy and your information architecture. So we use a couple tools to do this, but basically it's, in layman's terms, it's like your nav and your site structure. What does it look like? What pages are you including? What is the map to your site, so to speak?
Yeah, and and this is really, I mean, you can remove the word information architecture and even simplify that in to what are you trying to say to your potential customer, and are you fulfilling their needs, or are you talking about yourself, right? So developing a persona and then saying, okay, this is how we're going to break down this site. And we've talked about this before, but one of the most useful ways of doing this is jumping over to your local office supply store, whether it's Staples or whatever, and they sell these packs of Post-it notes that come in a variety of different colors, like 12 different colors. And then just Post-it note, pick a color for every page type. So maybe you have a number of products. You have a product template. You'll have business pages like About Us and Team Profiles and Contact and various other things. Then you'll have probably, you could have product maybe vertical or persona, and start to create that map so that it's, the analogy is just building a house, right? You don't start pouring a foundation until you've got the blueprints down. Well, you could, but you probably won't be successful.
For sure. No. And I think that another thing, as you have all these, whether you're doing the Post-it method or you're using like a digital tool that can help you map out those kinds of things. Dan's going to put up an example in a minute. But when you are doing that, you can also look at, here's the scope of everything I'd like to say. And also consider a very common communication tactic is, what do you need to say to them? What would you like to say to them? What would be nice to say to them? So you're not, a lot of people start very, very wide and they want to say absolutely everything to everyone. That's not the case. Please make your content specific to which audience, which industry you're speaking to. And then that's how you'll kind of naturally see, well, the must-have things are going to be like your top nav, your main pages on your site. And the more need-to-know item, nice-to-know items are going to be maybe a sub-page or perhaps put into your editorial calendar, for example. But it very much helps build out the structure of where the information is going to go.
Sure. So just give me 1 second here. I'm just going to sanitize the thing.
For sure, yeah. And what Dan's going to show you is kind of once you have these pieces and your, whether you want to call it a site map or information architecture, once you have, the layout of your site, so to speak, in terms of information and pages, you can then start designing your flow. So, I am, this person and I work in this industry and I come to your homepage. What's my path? Like from that entry to site to conversion, ideally. What is the path that each person might take?
Yeah, so what we've got up here right now is a high-level information architecture for a slightly larger site, but still illustrates the example. And again, you don't need to use a tool like, we like Lucidchart a lot. It's
do.
very shareable. It's very easy to use. It's very effective to communicate. You could do this with a piece of paper if you're working solo. Just
For
boxes and arrows,
Yeah.
right? Defining and laying out how you want those pages and those page groupings to interact with each other and where they are in terms of importance and hierarchy,
Yep.
right?
Exactly.
You can go through that process. Then the next step, let me just do this. I will save you the pain of me switching tabs here. do. Now this one we can easily show because this is our own product. So once you have that, then you start, and this is what Courtney was just referring to here, is a user flow. What do you want users to do? Now this is a conversion user flow, but that's okay. You can have lots of flows. And again, this is just really a matter of saying, when someone lands on this particular type of page, I want them to do A, B, C. I want them to do one of these three things, right? And move from this page into this page or download this asset. And if they exit, I want to have an exit intent offer so I can capture them. At that point, once you start mapping that out, what's the purpose? It really clarifies itself why you're doing and designing these pages, as opposed to just doing it for the sake of doing it.
For
Right.
sure, yeah. And some of the results that you'll see when you have a very effective funnel is obviously like lower bounce rates, things like that, lower exit rates, and higher conversion rates in general. You can imagine like a very common thing we see is people when they do blog posts. It's a blog post, there is no link to any other content. There might be like a read the next post kind of a direction or the previous post at the bottom, a very common automatic functionality.
Yep.
But what is the actual intention? Like if the blog post is on a certain topic that relates to a particular feature, lead the person to that detailed feature page or to a case study on where someone used that feature. There should be a next step. Always think kind of what's next for this person. Because if you don't know where they're going to go next, they probably don't either, and they're probably going to leave your site.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So it's a good comment talking about blog content, for example. Typically in a design process, everyone's focused on the home page and the top level pages. Those are typically not your number one entry points on a first visit. Here is a fantastic example. One of my favorite blogs to read is Buffer. And they very strategically they've taken their content marketing plan and turned it into a powerhouse for their business. And the number one, what you can see here is a couple of things just in terms of design is, they are mobile first, so they don't have a sidebar because sidebars get shunted down to the bottom on a mobile view, so they've eliminated that entirely, which increases the readability space that they've got. And they very simply start your free trial up here, but you can see that their blog content, so they've designed, and if you go through and you read Buffer's blog, and if you're a regular reader of it, they have a very strategic approach to their content. So they've mapped this out. So in a similar way, what you want to do is think about, don't blog for the sake of blogging. There's a purpose behind that content because that will be the number one way that people are first introduced to you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
So in terms of that, again, just to review very quickly, it starts with the information architecture. What types of pages are you going to put together? How are they going to interact? Then a user flow. What's going to happen? Like what messaging do I want?
Like how does someone navigate through those pages? Now that you have them, like how does someone go through them? What is the proper flow?
Yep.
And you typically tell, that's where our lovely acronyms like TOFU, MOFU, and BOFU come in. You have top of funnel content that's more general, high level content.
Yep.
And getting down into the nitty gritty that is more like case studies and actual practical examples as opposed to answering like high level questions about perhaps your product or service.
So you can see how information and architecture, I've got up here, the stage 1, flows very quickly into stage 3, which is content creation, which is where you start blocking your content creation. So you can see that the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then stage 4, which is a little further down here, which is front-end design, which happens last. Don't start that first.
Yeah.
You can have, and the intention of this is having collaborative teams be able to collaborate without everybody, without having too many cooks in the kitchen.
Exactly.
And to avoid that, so that it becomes this idea of your plans are your information architecture and your setup, Content creation then flows from that in blocks, right? And then as well, you can start blocking page templates now, and I'll show one right here. So this is a blocking for an actual project. This came at this point in the process. Now you can have 4 different teams working on this. You could have 2 teams working on it, but the idea being that you can work in parallel, because the front end design team can work on brand guidelines and I want to use this type of an element, but the IA team, and when you're into content blocking, may say, hey, you know what, we need to have a few different types of calls to action in here, and you know, we want to show social proof here of the number of customers we've got, the number of events that we've done.
Yep.
Well, that can go right to the design team initially to begin that process. Doesn't have to be held up by the actual content.
For sure, yeah. We've broken it into these kind of 4 stages just for roadmap's sake, but typically, yes, things would happen in parallel to one another. And depending on how established of a company you are, you might already have brand guidelines, and you may already have these assets that you're kind of working from.
Yep.
But you still have to develop like your actual user experience and what it'll actually look like, down to like what would a CT, like a little call to action button on your website look like, and things like that.
Yeah.
And you can see in here, we have some filler text, but you know, again, whether you're using graph paper and writing this stuff out with a pencil and paper doesn't matter. But think about the words that describe your business, and think about the value that, and this is a really big thing, and it's hard. It's not about you.
No.
And it's hard because you're passionate about like your product and your business. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
You've got to think about the person reading this. You think about your customer and what value. Do you have a valid customer value proposition for them?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Read through, and anywhere you have a feature, make it a solution. Don't present the feature that you have. What is the problem that your feature solves? So very much front facing until you get down into more, you know, once they want your solution, and then you can start speaking about yourself. Well, here's how we solve that problem.
So just to use this particular example, this is a group that's up on the screen here that is in fact a reseller for about 18 different products. So the pain point is for their customers is they're getting multiple invoices from multiple different suppliers, and it's really hard to manage, and it gets very expensive. We've duplicated our services. Well, streamlining everything by getting one platform with one invoice where it's all understandable is the solution to the pain point, and that was what in this particular case we were trying to bring front and center, that there are all these options that you can select from, and then there's one simple invoicing solution. So go through that process, though. That's an important process for your business, because otherwise what happens is if you can't define the customer value proposition that you've got, you're going to have a very high bounce rate, ineffective, inability to generate leads, right? It may look beautiful, but
And this step
who
is
cares?
also a very important step that sometimes in their rush to create a website, people skip and they just start writing a page. And they're like, here's the page I need, just start writing it. It's a really great way to have a really text-heavy website. When you map it out like this, it also allows you to look at what you need in terms of infographics, iconography, lovely white space, which is very much what's popular right now, especially. So it really helps to map out that kind of feel. So when you look at mapping a page, it's not just the copy, it's also the graphic content as well.
Yeah, and designing for mobile first. So what I've put up here is one of our favorite frameworks for the WordPress platform. This is not the only one that exists. There are others, and there are other sites. And quite frankly, if you're willing to get into it, sites like Squarespace or Wix. Certainly valid depending on who you are. That could be the right fit if you're non-technical and you want to be able to do it.
For sure. If you have a side hustle or you're a smaller company like an entrepreneur and you yourself want to be hands-on with your site and you don't necessarily have a team that's doing it for you, 100% you can use Wix and Squarespace. That's what they're meant for.
Yep. Shopify with themes, ClickFunnels for funnel-based landing pages, Unbounce for landing pages as well can be used, and they're all drag and drop. So one of the things here is, but I think the point is to use these frameworks. It's important. Obviously, if you've got a very large 6-figure budget and you've got the resources to do it, certainly. But even in those cases, one of the things is design for flexibility and usability, and design it so that you can change it. So you can update it, that the marketing team has control over it if it's a company, as opposed to the development or the design teams.
For sure. Both teams will
Yeah.
thank you. The devs will be like, good, we don't have to do it. And the marketing people will be like, good, we can do it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And quite often we run into situations with clients where they're baffled because they are unable to keep their content, their site content up to date. And that has to be. The days of like the website's done, I think one of the analogies that I liked that I've heard in the past is like, when is fashion done?
Yeah.
It's never done. It's always evolving. It's always changing. You really should view all of your online assets as never being done and always constantly evolving. So you've got to have the right tools to be able to do that.
For sure, like that would, be you could even just say, like, see how silly that is by saying like a website built 8 years ago would still be perfectly fine today.
Yeah, no.
Like everything's
Yeah.
completely different. So it wouldn't be mobile, it wouldn't be anything. So it's definitely a reiteration. And website management should be part of, like, once you launch it, it's kind of part of the maintenance of it, website maintenance, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, very, very important. Mobile first. So what we're seeing, especially now that we're kicking into the busier time of the season, in the fourth quarter of the year leading up to Christmas, we're seeing some of our sites up to 75% mobile engagement as opposed to the past where it's about 50-50. More and more people are simply using their mobile devices over their desktop devices. So start at the mobile device and work your way backwards.
Yeah.
For sure, and I think, and it's not saying disregard desktop entirely, it's just, they've just switched positions, that it's just designing mobile first. It's just simpler that way. I find, like, if you're designing desktop first, you're basically gonna have to do it twice and it doesn't work out. It's much simpler to take a mobile design and make it into desktop. And so just for your own headache and things like that, just do mobile first. Makes sense.
And when we say mobile first is when you're designing and you're thinking about the messaging and the imagery, think about that person interacting with it on their mobile device primarily, and then you work your way backwards to the desktop. So for example, 3 columns layouts on mobile don't work, right? Single column copy for scannability because of the size of the device, which is just good in general anyways.
Or even text blocks. When you have text on your site on a desktop, you have 4 sentences together. It might only be a couple lines. On mobile, that might be like 3 swipes of like a huge wall of text.
Yeah, that's actually one of the hardest things to explain to traditional writers is that paragraph form on the web does not work. It's ineffective. Now there's room for long form. Go to medium.com, spin up a blog and write a 2,000 page or 2,000 word article. Go ahead. That's different.
Avoiding walls of text doesn't mean that your page doesn't have a lot of text on it. It's just the way you've broken it up, and that's where the visual content comes in. And it could be something as simple as white space as well. If you're looking at us and you're like, I'm not a designer, how do I do this? Think of something like a quote. Pulling a quote out of your blog post, adding some nice white space, and adding the quote block to it. You've broken up the text right there.
So. And philosophically understanding that and we all have this experience, is that on mobile devices you're heavily distracted. So something may come up, but you're not interacting in a, unless you're doing some heavy research, you're not interacting for 20-25 minutes. So when you're designing for mobile, you're designing also for the user of a mobile device. It's going to be fast, it's got to be scannable. They may leave multiple times, so your time on page may be reduced. But multiple visits and tracking multiple returns is important. That's what we mean when we say mobile first. Like, it's not just think about one column and the device size. There's also a whole bunch of other stuff behind that. Anyways, it's 5:09. We mission not accomplished at all on our timing.
But
I got here late today.
Though.
Yeah, we did get it.
Okay.
We did get through what's working, which is good, because sometimes we've kicked that one to the curb too. All right, so next week we'll have our brand new spanky Facebook event and a big announcement next week.
For sure, we'll be having.
Which was supposed to happen this week, but it pushed it to next week. That's okay. We're allowed to make those decisions on this show.
That's marketing for you.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. All right, everybody. Well, unless anyone else has anything to add.
I think
we're
good.
good.
Just have a good weekend,
All right, have a
For
great
sure.
weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week on episode 45.
Woo!
See you
Pushing
then.
50.